Most people build businesses. A rare few build ecosystems where culture, craft, and community become inseparable from the bottom line. Travis Hann is one of those rare founders. As the creator and visionary behind Pender and How, he spent years helping business leaders sharpen their edge, not by chasing fleeting trends or chasing vanity metrics, but by reimagining how identity, strategy, and narrative fuse into enduring brands. Travis doesn't just consult. He collaborates, elevating his clients to become distinct voices in crowded markets. His journey didn't follow a straight line. Along the way, he learned that influence isn't cultivated through noise, but through clarity of purpose and relentless commitment to real value. Whether working with CEOs seeking authenticity, founders wrestling with growth, or teams struggling to align culture with vision, Travis blends analytical precision with narrative intuition, a combination that feels as rare as it is effective. The companies that he's built and advised aren't just successful. They leave something meaningful behind. And in a world that's obsessed with scale at the expense of soul, Travis reminds us that impact without integrity is just noise in disguise. This is a conversation about leadership that listens, strategy that feels human, and the courage it takes to build something that endures. And before we start the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Sanjay, a graduate of Deep Wealth Mastery, and he says, the investment I made in the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it's a rounding error compared to the value created today and the future value I'll receive. Or how about William, who says, and I love this, a company that's attractive to sell is also a great one to own. The Deep Wealth Mastery Program gives me the best of both worlds. Now, speaking of growth and adding value, check out what Leon says. He says that the Deep Wealth Mastery Program changed how and who we hire. We've now begun to hire talent today that we never would have hired if it weren't for the program. The talent we're hiring today is helping both increase our growth and profits and our future enterprise value. Man, I love that kind of feedback because it's that kind of feedback that's what gets me out of bed every day. Deep Wealth Mastery System, it's the only system based on a 9-figure deal. That was my deal. And as I said no to a 7-figure offer, created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery. And that's what helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, whether that's 2 years away or 22 years away, and if you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about Deep Wealth Mastery, otherwise known as the Scale for Ultimate Sales System. That's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions. Whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for 3 or 4 decades, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're high-tech, SaaS, low-tech, whatever the case may be, come in and network with other business owners, with other businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. Again, that's a 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. It has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, Deep Wealth Nation, we have a saying here, the team at Deep Wealth: show us your team and we'll tell you your future. So Deep Wealth Nation, how is your team? Do you have a team? What's it looking like? You have all those questions of, I'm here, I want to get to there, what do I do, what does that look like? And you know what? We have a very special guest in the House of Deep Wealth. You heard the official introduction, but we have a fellow founder, entrepreneur, thought leader, visionary leader in the House of Deep Wealth. Travis, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. There's always a story behind the story. So Travis, what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Thanks, Jeffrey. Super happy to be here, and thanks for having me on. My story starts all with sports, Jeffrey. Competitive in nature, always wanted to win, became a real big golf advocate at a young age, which led me into some really fascinating, great rooms because of golf, but naturally business circulated those rooms as well, which is kind of what started striking curiosity. And I ended up moving down to Florida to kind of chase a bit of a golf dream at a young age. And what I thought was good at golf was subpar, and I got to see what good looks like, and then what great looks like, and then what exceptional looks like, and was a bit of an eye opener. And I chose to go down the business road relatively early in the golf journey, just realizing perhaps how far-fetched I was from where I needed to be. And I ended up finding myself in the world of recruitment. And I'm now the founder of Pender and How, which is an executive recruitment firm. and human capital firm where we help build leadership teams, guide culture with our clients. And we work with a variety of different businesses, from private equity firms, venture capital firms, to the businesses that are within those portfolios, the founder-led firms from 5 people to a couple hundred people. We've seen it all, and it's really exciting. But what really led me here, Jeffrey, was becoming obsessed with what made people great in sports originally. And you see the people on TV, and those are the names that we know, but there are so many more that you don't see on TV that are grinding it out. And the question that always caught me was, what's missing? And what are those people doing on TV that are different than those that are trying to chase that dream? And naturally, that led me to business, where now I'm obsessed with figuring out what great CEOs look like. What are they doing? And what makes a founder exceptional? Why do some founders have obnoxiously large exits that are great successes, but others can't figure out how to put that together? And that's what our firm does, is helping build those great leadership teams. And we've seen great success stories and been a part of them. And that's really what kind of lit the fire to bring me down this road.
Well, firstly, Travis, always nice to meet a fellow Canuck and Floridian all in one. Judge Wink, you got to watch out for those guys. I hear they're quite the lot. But that said, from the field of golf to the field of business. So you went from the golfing world into the business world. What did the field of golf, when you're golfing out there, any insights or strategies that carried with you, or habits or rituals into the business world that's really helped you?
Yeah, discipline is really what it comes down to. Golf's a unique sport, similar to tennis, similar to any individual sport, where all of the pressure is on you. When you're standing on the first tee and you have to hit a shot in front of thousands of people, there's absolutely no one else you can lean on to execute that. And business is the same in many ways. But I would say it comes down to discipline. When I think about the best athletes in the world that I've seen live or that I've been around, they are so disciplined to the second. They know what they're doing the day ahead. They have it mapped out perfectly, what they're going to eat, what they're going to do, et cetera. And top executives are very similar. They know before they go to bed the top 3 things that they need to execute tomorrow. I would say that's really what it comes down to. And I've always been a very disciplined individual, and that just kind of comes naturally to me. But there's this wire that extraordinary people have that they can't let loose. But there's also a piece of talent that can't always be, I would say, taught or trained, Jeffrey. I mean, there's a great aspect of being scrappy and being able to hustle it out. And sometimes the best people that win aren't always the most talented. They're just absolutely relentless in not wanting to lose. So I think that's what it would be. I've said this time and time again, but if you compare business to sports, the only sport where you don't get to practice as much as you play. In business, you get thrown into rooms to make decisions on the spot that could be life-changing for many. And that might be the first time you ever have to make that decision. So sports aren't always like that. I mean, you can go out there and hammer golf balls for hours on hours. I'm sure the environments change and what's on the line might change, but at least you get to feel what that repetitive exercise might look like. Where in business, it's not always the case.
Absolutely. And some great advice. I wish I had followed that advice. Being a young entrepreneur, Travis, one of my biggest mistakes, and it actually came out in our exit. I was sharing with you offline a little bit about our exit, of how today we talked about the 9-step roadmap, and we didn't have all 9 steps. As successful as the exit was, 9 figures and everything, we made big mistakes. And one of my biggest mistakes, the company revolved around me for far too long. So in other words, the company didn't really run without me. And by the time I figured that out, it was well into running the company, and I did too little too late. I already had a team in place, but when we went into our liquidity event, it was picked up by, of course, the very smart private equity and the other future buyers and the investors. Hey, Jeffrey, this is great, but your team is still relatively new, and as great as your company is, we're going to ding you for that. And I know I'm not alone with that. So let me ask you this. When you're working with fellow entrepreneurs, founders, business owners, generally speaking, and you'd be right to say, well, Jeffrey, listen, every business, every founder is on his or her own journey. They are unique, but yeah, for sure. But generally speaking, is there a Pareto's law, the 80-20 principle? Yes, Jeffrey, 80% of the so-called challenges, what we otherwise call opportunities here at Deep Wealth, 80% of these challenges or problems are actually coming from 20% of these same patterns that are happening again and again, or mistakes, or people just overlooking, or blind spots. Anything come to mind with that?
Yeah, just got off a call with a really great CEO, and he kind of said it best. He said he's in charge of 3 things. He was brought in for 3 things, the 3 Ps: process, people, and product. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's rolling up his sleeves, executing each of those activities within. He has amazing leaders within 3 of those departments that can execute. And people are the company's greatest asset, always has been, always will be. Some leaders recognize that and see that a bit more clearly than others. But those who do recognize that have a really great contagious culture that tends to take care of itself. But the one question I often ask founders, or I even see investors ask founders if we're facilitating introductions, is, what happens if you fall off the face of the earth for a month with your business. And I used to say, what happens if you get hit by a bus? My wife told me it's better to say what happens if you win the lottery. So we'll stick with that. It sounds a little bit more optimistic, but the reality is that the question comes from the same point. Can you disappear for a month and will the business be okay? If you ask yourself that and you're, heck no, it's not going to be okay, you got to look in the mirror and perhaps you got to think about what you can bring into your organization to have somebody learn the SOPs, the processes, et cetera, so that you can delegate a little bit more. If the answer is heck yes, that's great. Now maybe figure out what's missing in terms of more scalability or how do you take it to the next level. But you really, it sounds crazy and founders are notorious to not want to give responsibilities away, myself included, but you have to be replaceable and you have to be comfortable being replaceable, even if you don't want to sell your business. Not everyone wants to sell their business or is thinking of liquidity in mind, but just for the health of the organization and the sustainability of the company and the legacy, you got to have a strong number two. You got to have a strong number three. It's critical to business operations.
Yeah, so with you there. And let me ask you again, continuing along my mistakes, and I've said on the podcast so often, if I had $1 for every mistake that I ever made, I would not have needed my 9-figure exit. I'd be actually far wealthier than what I did on the exit side. And for me, early on, when I was looking to bring on what some people call the hired gun or just outside talent, I made mistakes, some of the classic mistakes where it just culturally wasn't a fit. And I know you and the team are all about culture, and we're going to get there momentarily. As a founder, though, I'm looking to make a hire. Maybe if it's even my first hire, I'm going to look to fire myself so the company does begin to run without me. I'm looking to bring someone in at the C-suite, president, CEO, wherever it's going to be. What should be some either telltale signs, yes, this is the direction to go with this candidate, or red flags, hey, you know what? Stop, run as fast as you can in the other direction. This is not where you want to be with this individual.
I think there's so much that goes into this. You're talking a bit about the assessment process and fit, and how do you know that person's the one, where it actually starts a little few steps before, because you're talking about hiring somebody for the first time, a role that doesn't exist technically. And I think where it all starts with is figuring out what that role actually looks like. People often use the title, Jeffrey, of I need a COO, or I need a director of operations, or I need a CFO. And you'd be amazed at how many times we go into a room with a founder and we talk about that, and we come out of the room with a completely different, maybe not job title, but the scope is completely different. One of the biggest mishire mistakes in this type of setting is just a misunderstanding of what the role actually is, right? And communicating that to an individual who wants to sign up for that. I've done a couple of different founder transitions in my recruitment career where we bring in a CEO for the first time in the organization and the founder steps aside. And every candidate I've ever spoken with who I've put forward for a role like that calls me after the first meeting and says, are you sure they really want to give up that responsibility? I don't believe it. And so they all have that little question mark of, are they actually ready to do what they say they want to do? So, and hey, embrace that as a founder. I think that energy is contagious. Not everyone is built with that. But if you want to see your organization truly traject to a next level, you have to get comfortable with that, because quite frankly, the person that brings a company from call it 0 to 5 million is very different than the person that brings it from 5 to 15, and again from 15 to 50. And it's not that one's better than the other, it's skill sets. So I think to go back to your question, Jeffrey, you got to figure out what that role actually is before you start assessing on whether or not it's a make or break hire. What I often say, and it's very practical, is as a founder in any role, if you want to replace yourself, for the next course of the month, document every single activity and every single responsibility you do throughout the day, and start to categorize that on responsibilities. And that'll give you a real tangible list of items of what you want to give away and what you perhaps don't want to give away. And I think that is the most pragmatic way to think about a role you want to create. And it'll really help drive with transparency in that hire versus just pulling together some buzzwords of, operations, P&L, et cetera. Well, what do you actually mean by wanting to give that up? Let's jump into the granular responsibilities so we can find someone who wants to do that.
And so as you're talking about that, it's circling back to something I've experienced. I'm sure you've been there as well. So many founders go through. And so, Travis, in your experience, why is it, do you think, that founders get stuck between where their business is, where it could be, and deep down, they probably know, hey, I'm not the person to take it from here to there, but they don't want to get out of the way. They find all kinds of reasons of, yes, I should still be here. No one can do it as good as me. List goes on and on. If we take away all the noise and we're just coming at it from, okay, this is all that I do. This is my craft. I've taken the art of science and business and everything else in between and the whole craft of that. I've put that all together, and actually, here's why founders are mainly getting it wrong. What would you say to that? What is that?
There could be a little bit of an ego play to it, Jeffrey, in terms of they want to do it all. And listen, I'm in that boat too. And I think every founder is to a certain extent. Some perhaps recognized earlier or later than others in terms of there's someone out there that can do this better than me. And that is where true growth is unlocked. When you can hire your first director of operations, or you can hire your first CFO or your first head of sales, you'd be amazed that if you hire the right person, they're actually going to do it better than you. So figure out what you don't want to let go of, what you genuinely love waking up to do in the morning. Try and keep that associated, but focus on winning, not always focus on being. And that's a little bit of our saying internally is no egos are allowed, but we're always focused on winning. And I think founders all share a couple of things that also relate to your question. It's pretty easy as a creator, because founders are creators. They're very creative creatures, but it's very easy to get drunk on ideas. It's very easy to get distracted when one thing starts to take off and say, oh my God, our competitor's doing this. They're making money in this area. We need to do that. Well, not necessarily. Perfect your craft first and foremost. And sure, there's no harm in driving innovation, but try and remember that, execution eats strategy for breakfast. You got to get reps in. You got to make sure you have happy customers. You got to make sure you're focusing on the service thing first versus create. And a few of the founder transitions I've done when I've been brought in by the investors of the board, it's very much the person's amazing. They created this thing, but they're so hyper-focused on perfecting the product that the sales are not following anything because the product is getting all the focus. It'll never be perfect. Products are never perfect. They're constantly evolving. So I think it's just important to keep a little bit of an open mind around that stuff.
So true in terms of what's there. And so in doing that, let's take the curtains, let's roll them back. What's the method to your madness? What's your secret sauce, Travis? I'm coming to you. Okay, Travis, this is my company. Here's where we are. Here's where we want to be. And perhaps it's someone in sales, or we're going to be bringing someone in for operations or the C-suite. What are you doing? What does that look like? How long does that typically take? And what would I expect?
Timelines are always a little bit difficult to put a finger on. If I kind of average out all of our assignments over the last decade that I've seen them through, Jeffrey, you're probably looking somewhere between 4 to 5 weeks to get a real qualified assessed shortlist to review. And then it depends on the internal process of the company we're working with. Are we doing assessments? Are we bringing in IO psychologists? Are we good on that stuff? Do we want to do more a two-step process and kind of break bread over dinner and lunch? And every company, every decision maker has a little bit of a different feel for that. There are some non-negotiables, I think, in a process that we strongly suggest need to take place. And obviously, one is meeting in person. And I know that sounds very simple, but it is so difficult to get a true read on someone's behaviors or style, communication over a screen. We're doing this today. It's convenient for the both of us. We don't want to get out in that snowstorm and then meet in person. But the reality is decisions and teams and cultures are historically always done in person. For the last 4 or 5 years, this virtualization has taken over, but you got to get out there and see the people. There's a really great interview concept called top grading. And there's a great book out there on top grading that everyone should read. But the real kind of cold notes on that is sticking with a question and asking it in many different ways over a long period of time. And there's more nuance to it than that. But the concept is you always want to look for consistency as you get to know someone in an interview process. Accuracy are what they're, because sometimes people can say inaccurate things, but say it so confidently that everyone picks it up and thinks it's true. You really want to make sure that the consistency is there, hence asking similar questions over the course of a process, the accuracy of what they're saying, and then how do they make you feel? And those are very important things over an interview process that we stay very close to feeling. But the secret sauce is difficult. We don't have a software behind our curtain, Jeffrey, that we promise the world to. But what we do have is process. I talked about discipline earlier personally, and having discipline in the process. We know it works because we've done it so many times for the last 10 plus years. That's what's important, right? And at the end of the day, we're dealing with people, right? So it's not picked one's results just based on meeting and interviewing. That's why references, assessments, et cetera, are important to provide as much data as you can to a decision.
And Travis, as you're talking about that, and you're talking about Jeff Smart and top grading, incredible book. Here's what I'm going to put out there, and you can read the book. You can master the systems, which I did as an early founder, early entrepreneur. That said, though, when it comes to hiring talent, there is an art and there is a science. And here's what I'm going to put out there. The younger Jeffrey, first starting his company, would have said, you know what? I don't need a Travis. I'm going to save the fees. I'm going to do it myself. And I did try and do it on my own. versus it's like saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to figure out the tax system, the tax code. I'm going to file my own taxes. Well, we'll see how that goes when the IRS comes knocking at your door because you made some mistakes or
Yeah.
declare some things that you shouldn't have or took some deductions that you shouldn't have. Who knows what that is? So when you have the art and the science coming in, where you're coming in to say, okay, Jeffrey, look, we got to know you, the team, the culture. We have our own systems. We've been doing this for ages, and we're now going to curate a list of candidates that any one of them would likely be fine, but you'll make that final decision in terms of what's there. What are you doing that as a founder? I'm simply not able to do. It's not that I'm not smart or that I couldn't do it. You're down that journey far longer. This is all that you do. This is your focus. What would you say to that person in Deep Wealth Nation who's saying, yeah, whatever, I'll save the money, I'll save the time, I'll do the recruitment on my own? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, some people can and some people do. I would say it's a financial commitment is the sticker shock aspect to doing it compared to a wrong hire. And then we talk, right? Because a wrong hire is more expensive at the end of the day. You got to think of the analogy of one bad apple spoils the bunch. There's truth to that, right? So if you bring somebody in that's hurting your culture, your high performers, there's a monetary aspect to that. If you bring them in and they make financial mistakes, there's a monetary aspect to that. There's a wasted time mistake, right? If you bring somebody in that's the wrong person for 6 months and you spend them trying to get there, you're now taking your eye off the prize of making money. So all in all, yes, there's a financial commitment to a service like ours, Jeffrey, but it's a lot like selling your house. If, you could do it yourself, or you can use an agent that knows the market, knows the marketing strategies, et cetera. And you got to put some trust in that. There's a little bit of insurance as well, an insurance feeling that goes, if you're hiring a COO or a CFO and you're doing it yourself and you've never hired a COO or a CFO before, I would be pretty nervous to do that myself because you don't actually know what you're even looking for. And using folks like ourselves as an agent, we're able to bring a lot of that intel to the decision making to help you make right decisions. You're able to see a lot more people to get a real sense of who you are. And that's what I would say to that. It's not always cheaper is not always better. There's a lot of ways to do things that are cheap. And I think of my own experiences and the things that I've cheaped out on. I've always been very frustrated because I've had to go buy it again and buy the more expensive one. So there's a few ways to do things, but I would just go back to the reassurance. And a lot of these organizations that use executive search firms, Jeffrey, they have full built out talent acquisition teams even. So now we're talking about the big companies. And even then we'll go and retain a search firm. And it's not about their internal team perhaps all being incapable of doing the search. It's about the fact that they want to make sure that there is an entire team and a strategy to bring the absolute best person forward. It's not always about just saving a few bucks.
Absolutely. And as you're talking about that, you're reminding me, hey, don't look at the price, look at the value. So in other words, you could be, in this case, you're purchasing a service and it's going to be far more than doing it on your own, but what's the value that is bringing in terms of the wrong hire, false starts, lost opportunity costs, losing customers because of that? Who knows what it is? The list just goes on and on. And here at Deep Wealth, Travis, we have a maxim, and that is treat it as though you're going to keep your company forever on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're going to be selling it tomorrow. Jeffrey, what are you talking about? You're talking to both sides of your mouth here. Keep it forever, sell it tomorrow. What do you mean? Well, if I'm going to keep it forever. The danger with that is I'm going to get lazy. I'm going to become complacent. If I'm selling it tomorrow, okay, I'm going to be on edge. I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And it's that balance between the two. I'm not cutting corners for profitability because there's legacy involved. There's viability, having the long term, but I'm not also falling back on my laurels. Well, what's worked always work. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as the saying goes. Yeah. And so with that in mind, let's take it now to private equity firms that are coming to you. Hey, we want you to find C-suite, leader, president, CEO, whatever the case is going to be for one of our new acquisitions, one of our portfolio companies. And the reason that I'm bringing this up for Deep Wealth Nation who aren't there yet, and Deep Wealth Nation, whether you do want to sell your company or whether you don't, you better have an incredible leadership team. Forget a liquidity event. Is your company going to be here tomorrow, next year, next month, the next decade for the future generation if you're planning to keep it forever? So from a private equity side of things, Travis, when you and the team are brought in, what are they looking for in a leader? And Deep Wealth Nation, listen to this because this is what your team should be exemplifying, because I'll put out there, it's not talked about, but private equity firms are the most valuable companies on the planet. Yes, you have those big names out there, the trillion-dollar values. I hear that. But behind the scenes is private equity. That's fueling that. That's funding that. That's getting that there. So when you're brought in, Travis, what does that look like? What are they looking for in leaders?
I'm glad you tee it up like that, Jeffrey, because the private equity folks are brilliant, right? They are very good at what they do. They know how to analyze a deal. They know what is going to work and what doesn't work. And that's why their results are where they are. And I'm very fortunate to have seen inside of private equity conversations, whether it be hiring for a portfolio company where the mandate is very obvious and I can talk to that. But I've also seen them analyzing deals and supporting them, finding people that are in that space who they want to talk to as a part of their due diligence and what they look for and what they ask in those conversations. So I've seen them in action and I'm grateful for that. And I think there's a couple of things that they look for. One is when they go to buy an organization, first of all, they all have different strategies, but the consensus of them are rather similar. But it all comes down to people. Who is the founder? Who is the leadership team around the founder? And it goes back to the question that I asked earlier. If the founder were to leave, what happens to that team? What happens to that culture? If the entire sales division is tied to the relationships of that founder or that CEO, huge red flag, huge risk. There's no sustainable growth pattern there. So the founders listening to this, figure out the sales function. If you are 100% of the leads that come into your organization, it's a lifestyle business right now because you're missing the enterprise value that a private equity firm is going to look for. So try and diversify that and figure out a strategy. That's where we can help. In terms of when they have a portfolio company and perhaps they're 6 or 9 months into an acquisition or some M&A integration and they're starting to recognize some gaps, Jeffrey, what they look for is repeatable success. So has an individual done what we're looking to do before? Where have they done it and to what scale? If they're looking to bring, call it a $30 million business to a $100 million business, but they're looking at candidates who have only seen $10 million businesses, that's not going to do the trick. They want to bet on things that have worked in the past. They're not huge risk takers. They're very calculated, data-driven investors. And it goes the same to the people strategy when they build their teams. They want to make sure that they're bringing people in who have done it before, who have seen it before, who they can sleep well at night knowing that the business is in safe hands. So I think when you're a founder and you have a smaller company, it's a little bit of a different thought process when you hire on your team, because sometimes you might not always be able to afford, the person that is where you want to be. And I think the skill set is a little bit different when you're on that side of the table where you want scrappiness, you want low ego, you want hard work ethic, you want commitment and discipline, but perhaps you do have to bet on people a little bit earlier in their stage where they haven't done it before. And that's where that cultural component and the work ethic component really comes in.
And so as you're talking about that, and by the way, Travis, everything you've shared, I couldn't agree with more in terms of what's there. Deep Wealth Nation, this is not gold, it's platinum, what Travis is sharing. Let's talk about culture, because I know that's a big part of what you do, Travis. Not just the culture with what you have with the team, but the culture when you're walking into every company. Because for us at Deep Wealth, the culture, that is a foundational X factor. Step 2 X factors here in our 9-step roadmap. Culture, as much money as a competition can have, they cannot copy your culture. It's like a fingerprint. Yeah. It's unique to that company. And by the way, it goes both ways. You can have a rich, thriving culture, or you can have a toxic culture, and each has their own ramifications that go along with that. So when it comes to culture, taking a culture from where it is, perhaps when it's not such a great culture, to an even better one, or a really good culture, helping take it to a better one, there's always that fear, okay, we're bringing in a hired gun, a new person. Our culture is going to suffer, or it's going to change the company as we know it. How do you deal with that? And how do you ensure that the culture is as good, if not better, by the time you're done?
Yeah. Culture is a funny one. And I actually look at a book right above my head right now in my office, which is the book on Netflix and culture and reinvention. I don't know if you've read that one, No Rules, Rules. And so many companies have different ways of thinking about culture. To some, it's a buzzword. To some, that is genuinely their DNA, and that's how they hire people and keep people. And I think of even our own organization a lot built around culture, Jeffrey. Last week, we were down in Mexico with the entire team. Everyone flew in for 3 days, and we're in a real big growth period for our own organization right now, where we doubled headcount over the last year. We're going to look to continue doing that strategically over the next few years. I use that trip, which we've done annually for the last 4 years, and we'll continue to do it fiscally given. And I hire around that, knowing that I had 6 new people coming into that meeting last week. I even rushed one hire to make sure that we can get them on board to go to that meeting, because I bet so much on that meeting of how our culture is actually embedded into newer folks who have not necessarily felt it. And keep in mind, our organization is national, so not everyone sits in one office. I would love that, but that's just not the reality of our geography. And it's funny to see everyone coming out of that meeting, how much the integration has taken care of itself. It's nothing that I did during that conference. It's just 3 days of people getting in one room together. And you can just start to see the energy of the older folks who have been here since day one rubbing off on the newer folks. And it's really amazing. So I just bring that up more as an anecdote. In terms of culture, when we're even brought in as consultants, one of the things we do, and it goes back to maybe our secret sauce a little bit, Jeffrey, very rare will we lead a search without meeting the client in person, ideally at their offices, whether it's a manufacturing facility, a skyscraper in downtown office building. And the reason for that is, one, I think it's important for relationship building with the client. But two is, how can we go out and represent an organization and try and find somebody to come in and make an impact if we have absolutely no idea what it's like inside your company from a cultural standpoint? Because then we're just assessing based on paper criteria of what is good. Okay, they have a CPA, they have an MBA. Yes, they've seen $50 million growth from 100 million. That is just the on paper qualifications, right? But how are we supposed to recommend someone if we've never walked the floor, and how do you assess? So it's so critical and important, but I think it comes down to talent attrition. That tells you everything you need to know a little bit when you're thinking about joining a company, or when you need to look inwards and say, how's my culture? If you have a revolving door and people are leaving every 12 to 18 months, it's a really big red flag. For yourself as the founder, you got to think about, why is that happening? Is that a people issue? Is that a compensation issue? Is that an industry issue? What's the reason? And as a candidate looking to join a company, that's the biggest red flag there is. When you ask a question, who was in the role last, and there's been 4 people in the role in the last 5 years, huge red flag. So that tells you everything you need to know about culture in some ways, Jeffrey. Sure, every case-by-case story, but that's what I lead with, and that's how I better understand the situation. Sometimes it's purely around attrition.
It's incredible because post-pandemic, it's now so easy, it's culturally accepted. I don't have to meet with you. I don't have to break bread with you. We can be across from our screens, and that's just going to be good. Pre-pandemic, hey, are you a weirdo? What's going on? What do you mean you don't want to meet? It's just amazing how the norms have changed. But you're right. It's so different when we're in person, and there's just that. It's a human condition. We can just pick up things that you can't do otherwise. And what you're picking up on ties directly into the culture side of things. So I'm speaking about the humanness, which is an interesting segue for my next question. Let's talk about artificial intelligence, AI. Changing society, changing the norms every day, making the headlines as we know it. Where are we today from AI on the back end, back office from where you are, Travis? Is it impacting what you're doing? And then on the front end, in terms of candidates, getting in touch with candidates, because it seems that everyone's busier now than they've ever been before. There's so much noise, even getting in front of someone or speaking to someone is so much more difficult. What's that been like for you the past even few months or past quarter or two with AI? Have things changed or not, for the better, for the worse, or about the same?
It's one of those things. As a boutique firm, I often say to everyone I talk to, one of our biggest advantages as a boutique firm is to roll out new technologies and digital tools and softwares immediately, see how they work. If they don't work, we roll them back. But comparable to a big, large global conglomerate, that's not the case for them. They have to go through a 12 to 18 month rollout period, integration, bring in consultants, and we're able to move a lot quicker than them and try new things to see what works. On the flip side of that, that can also serve as a distraction. And right now in the AI world, just the technology world, every day you wake up and there's a new tool going on, $1 billion valuation. This company is doing XYZ to fast track your go-to-market strategy. And it's great, but it's also sometimes not always practical. And AI for us, we're a very digitally driven firm. We have a very comprehensive tech stack built out that allows us to do our work flawlessly on the back end. But we'll never, I say never, but I'm mindful that the world moves quick. We're not interested in moving that to the front end where we have to remove the human from the human. We are in a human-centric business. We're at the forefront of human capital, and we don't want to replace humans with a digital tool that's going to allow us to move quicker, because moving quicker is not always better. You asked me 5 years ago, I was very much in the mindset of remote first, efficiency, profitability. It can increase productivity. And I'm now in the process of signing a new lease here to bring all the team into the office as much as possible, because I think that's where actual innovation is created. And you can see people thrive off being around people. That's what we do. It's been like that for years and years and years. So I've completely done a 180, and I'm sure my team will laugh if they're listening to this episode, Jeffrey, because I'm very much changing my voice versus where I was 5 years ago. But I just see how much action happens when everyone's in one room, and it becomes contagious. And that is a way to lock in culture. Very hard to do that virtually in culture. It's possible. That's what we've been living off of for a while, but it really becomes magic when you do it in person.
And speaking of that, I'm going to date myself with what I'm about to say next. Once upon a time, there was a saying, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. Which means, if you're wondering, hey, never heard that before, what that means, Deep Wealth Nation, when it came to purchasing a service or a product, if you went with the quote unquote, the big company, the big guy out there, you're not going to get fired for that. In fact, maybe you'll even keep your job, or you'll become a hero because they're big. They've been around a long time. And as a founder who was disrupting a marketplace, as a startup, as the underdog, from my own experience, that was always frustrating to me, because I knew in so many ways, not in all ways, but in certain ways, I was better than the competition that has been around forever. the names that everyone knew. I knew I could do it better than them. I'd work harder than them. I'd get better results. We were hungry. We were scrappy. And so that said, Travis, when we go to the world of recruitment, my goodness, there are a lot of big logos out there, big names. You don't have to name them. Everyone knows who they are. When you think executive recruitment, executive search, the names come into mind. And so someone in Deep Wealth Nation who's saying, okay, yes, I'm open to using a executive search recruitment firm. Travis, though, hey, you're an upstart. You're a newbie. You have all these other firms out there who have quite the experience, the name, the reputation precedes them. What would you say to that person in Deep Wealth Nation of why you and the team are the way to go?
It's like that in every industry, though, right? There's boutique players and there's conglomerates, and there's a market for each and a client for each. Some clients prefer the large household name, and others don't at all want to partner with the household name for certain reasons. I just had a personal experience on my own where we were using a really large national accounting firm that was doing an okay job, but I was just feeling like we were probably a small fish in a big pond for them. And I made the decision to move into a more boutique accounting firm. And I'm only 1 month in, and I'm just mind blown at the attention that we're being given and the efficiency and the communication. And I'm just excited to see what we've been missing for the last couple of years, quite frankly. And it's the same in our world. It's not to say the large conglomerates are not good. It's just they also focus on large conglomerates. So we are that mid-market search firm, and proud to be mid-market search firm where we're partner led. So who you get on the pitch is actually who you get on the search. It's not a delegation environment where there's a group of analysts that get handed a file and off they go on to the next pitch. That's just not the reality of a boutique setting where we are. But it's also a little bit more of a sense of ownership. Sure, you can bet on the big name in hopes that it's a bit of an insurance play that it's just going to work because it's the big name. But internally as well, for individuals that work for big companies, and not just in recruitment, if you drop the ball, it's a little bit easier to hide behind the big name. If you drop the ball at a boutique firm, that's a lifeline. There's only so many clients that circulate a big boutique firm to keep it going. So you can imagine that the delicacy to manage relationships and files is far more thought about than at a big firm where there's a volume where if you lose one of 1,000 clients, okay, we still got 999. You lose one of 10 clients at a boutique firm, you just lost 10% of your revenue. So it's a very different sense of our names on the wall, and we better always be putting our best foot forward. So that's just from an inside looking outside. But like I said, there's different clients for different organizations in any industry.
And with that in mind, Travis, where is your sweet spot in terms of the type of company, firm, entity that, yes, with this kind of characteristics for this company, regardless of the industry, we are their go-to executive search solution. Here we are. Let's go.
It's quite diverse. We work very well with investors, whether that be private equity, venture capital, or family office. And I think that goes back to the exact reason I just told you, Jeffrey, is we are low volume. So any client that we bring in is our biggest and best client. It's not one of a million, but it is very diverse. It is not one area. We have 6 industries that we focus within from where our clients sit. So life sciences and healthcare, technology and software, consumer, professional services, industrial manufacturing, and social impact. So we have the way that we've set up our firm is we're a generalist firm, which complements investors really well because often they're often generalist portfolios versus being niche in one space. And we're a one-stop shop for individuals like that, which is why it's appealing for them. We have partners that come from the industry that lead those spaces, that understand them intensely well. And that's why oftentimes we're working either with investors or investor-backed businesses, just because we're able to be a one-stop shop versus them having to have 6 firms that all have different specializations. So that's where we spend a majority of our time. And function-wise, anything from director, VP, C-suite, across all commercial-oriented roles is really what we do.
And so with that said, Travis, is there a topic or a question, even a theme, an important one that we haven't covered yet?
I don't think so. I think perhaps just the volatility that's taking place in the world these days has changed leadership quite a bit. I mean, you have geopolitical tensions that have been more aggressive than ever before. You have tariff threats that are affecting a lot of the industries. And then at the same time, you have the digital transformation that's happening at absolute Godspeed, Jeffrey, that's impacting organizations so quickly. So the CEO that is running a business today tends to look quite different than a CEO that was running a business 10 years ago. And we're just seeing things change so fast. And again, going back to the boutique firm, we're able to move and be a little bit more nimble in terms of our business strategy. But I think that's a theme that perhaps is circulating all of us, but we're seeing it daily.
So from that perspective, from a leadership perspective, and you're right, Travis, geopolitically, everything seems to be upside down and new headlines every day. What didn't work before is now working and vice versa. So from a leadership perspective, which affects business, what's required of a leader today? What would you see characteristic wise or skill set wise or experience wise today that's more important than it ever was before, especially if I'm now coming to you to, hey, I want to take my company to the next level. And it's going to be on the leadership and the leadership of my team to help get my company there. What should I be thinking of it in terms of the kinds of people I have on my team?
Low ego is one that's always easy to say, but the reason it's more important now is because I think leaders have to be comfortable delegating and not knowing answers more so than previously, because frankly, it's impossible to. When you wake up and there's a new headline about 100% tariff threat and you're running a manufacturing business that relies 80% on international markets, you got to be comfortable knowing who to call and admitting that you don't know what to do. More so than previously, where it might have been more predictable in the course of being a CEO. I think more and more we're seeing younger leaders who perhaps have a little bit of a different sense of speed and adaptability to the digital and technology markets. Not that you have to be younger to understand that, but it's moving at a bit more of a pace where that demographic tends to be able to plant themselves in an organization and really adapt well. I think all of that to say the willingness to constantly learn, Jeffrey, have very low ego and be humble. People want to work for good people. And I think if I go back to people are our biggest asset, but you often have to think about it's like a marriage. You have to be who they want to work for and you have to be who they want to work with. So if you're running an organization that allows there to be nonsense carried out, that's going to impact your culture and you're cool with that, you got to be prepared for that attrition number to be pretty high because that's just stuff that doesn't work these days. So I think that's what it all goes back to.
It's interesting how political tides, they change. And while we're recording this, it's interesting geopolitically, and this is not a political podcast by any stretch, but whether I'm operating in the US or the Make America Great Again, has really had huge ramifications out there in every sense, from how I'm operating my team to where my team's located to the business to everything else. What have you seen with your clients on, okay, we're going back to being American centric and the world is going to revolve around us. We're the great power in the world. Let's own it. Let's claim it. It's always been there. Until now, we haven't really stepped up to the plate for it, but now we're doing that. How's that changed in terms of what you're doing?
I'm not a very strongly political stance guy, but I find it amazing to see how the businesses adapt and how leaders have to adapt to actually deal with that, because frankly, it's out of all of our control. But what I've seen is kind of a nice thing in many ways on the inside, Jeffrey, is companies are being forced to be innovative and think about how to do business more sustainably and strategically. I got off a call this morning and it's a global CEO. They have operations in the US, but they're from Europe. And they've always had a decentralized finance department, for example. And now they're centralizing that again into one hub because they want to all be around each other in the same country, in the same city. And I think about another organization that we've just launched a partnership with, and they're a manufacturing organization that's going down a really fascinating new avenue. It's just fascinating because it's forcing companies and organizations to think a little bit differently and strategically and change the course of the game plan. But it's not the end of the world. It's all temporary. In a few years, it'll be a different strategy and it'll be different challenges that we're dealing with. That never stops, never easy, but it's fascinating to be forced to be innovative and to change. And I think innovation is good. You don't want to get too comfortable and rely on how you've been doing things for far too long.
I think, Untitled Nation, what you're also hearing of why it's so important with all the stakeholders in your business. Some people call them suppliers, other people call them vendors. I just call them team members, of why you want to have a stakeholder, a fellow team member, in this case, Travis and team, who, hey, we're changing with the times. We're observant with what's going on there. We're going in this direction. Well, so are we. We're right there with you to help get you from here to there. So that's it, Travis. We're going to go into wrap-up mode. It's a tradition here on the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's my privilege and honor where I ask the same question to every guest. Here's the question. It's a fun one for you. Let me set this up. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. Travis, imagine now it's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, the door is open, waiting for you to hop on in. What you do, you're now going to go to any point in your life. Travis, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be, what would you tell your younger self in terms of life wisdom or life lessons? Or, hey, Travis, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
It's a good question. I'm still pretty young, Jeffrey, so this is going to be really cliche. I don't know if I'd get in the car. I think professionally and personally, I'm in as much of my prime as I can be. I mean, I've got a young growing family that's at the perfect age where it's almost the opposite. You kind of want to hit pause for a little bit. The company is as best as it's ever been, and it's just getting more exciting. The team is exceptional, and I don't know if I'd want to go backward. Sure, you'd say, take me back 5 years and I'll throw all my cash into the one stock that blew up or something wild like that, but I'm still at the age where I'll catch up. So I don't think I'd get in.
I love that, Travis. No one's ever said I wouldn't get in, so I love that. But they have said, though, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, what I'm really hearing, enjoy the journey. I don't think I would change everything. I wouldn't change anything, Jeffrey, because if I changed anything, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that is the most popular theme that I hear with all of our incredibly smart, astute, and successful guests on the Deep Wealth podcast. And Travis, before we officially wrap things up, a listener in Deep Wealth Nation, they have a question for you. They want to speak with you. Maybe they want to bring you on, you and the team, to help get them to the next level with some new hires. Where is the best place online to reach you?
So we live on LinkedIn. That's our social media platform, Jeffrey. You can find me at Travis Hann there, Hann. And our company website is www.penderhow.com. And we're fast to respond and would love to connect and chat with any of the members accordingly.
And Deep Wealth Nation, it doesn't get any easier. It's a point and click. It's all there for you. Go to the show notes. All the information is there. Travis, it's official. It's a wrap. Congratulations. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Appreciate it.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribe, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.